Chapter 50-57. Kong Shinmu reacted. It was true.
Recently, he had been training in the outer domain small world, and there were often situations where he would ask Gu Xinyue and the others to come out directly.
If this happened many times, others would inevitably think that he had obtained a small world. Moreover, Princess Qi Yan had not been found until now. Even after she was captured by Kong Shinmu, she had never appeared in front of the public. So Emperor Shi Mystical Dragon guessed that Kong Shinmu had a small world. Kong Shinmu understood this and did not say anything. Emperor Shi Mystical Dragon was not a threat to him. As long as outsiders were not so sure, it was fine. And to be honest, Emperor Shi Mystical Dragon was only guessing. Unless Kong Shinmu admitted it himself, Emperor Shi Mystical Dragon was not very sure if Kong Shinmu had a small world or if he had some other means. Such special means of hiding people did not only exist in small worlds. Kong Shinmu, don't worry. This guess is only known by our own people. Emperor Shi Mystical Dragon glanced at Amoya and said with a chuckle, "It's only because Amoya has always been by your side that I can sense it so clearly. If it were anyone else, they would at most make a guess, and they would only have less than 30% confidence. In this case, they will not harm you, as long as you do not expose yourself in the future. If you want to raise a small world, you need a lot of cultivation resources. Moreover, Amoya also sensed that you have a heaven and earth sacred treasure on you. There are many layers of heaven and earth sacred treasures. If you want to unseal it, you will need a lot of resources." Kong Shinmu was suddenly shocked. He did not expect that Amoya's observation skills were so detailed that she could even see the small world and the heaven and earth sacred treasure. But fortunately, she did not know that the small world and the heaven and earth sacred treasure were the same thing. Generally speaking, the entrance to the small world and the heaven and earth sacred treasure were separated. Amoya obviously did not think too much about it. So, she did not know that Kong Shinmu's starry sky small world was the heaven and earth sacred treasure itself. Therefore, you need a lot of cultivation resources. I'll give you a list of the cultivation materials needed to unseal the Saint Grade seal. You can use this list to compare it with your heaven and earth Saint Grade item and analyze its attributes. Then, you will know what materials you need to unseal it. Based on my initial estimation, it would take 3 million gold dragon coins worth of cultivation resources to unlock the first layer of the seal. Unlocking the second layer of the seal required 10 million gold dragon coins. As for the third layer, it will cost 30 million gold dragon coins. Kong Shinmu had guessed this number before, but this was the first time he heard about it, so he was a little shocked. With so many cultivation resources, apart from a single race, it would be very difficult for an individual to come up with so many. Of course, this was only relatively common for practitioners below the Supreme Master level. If it was a Supreme Cultivator like Emperor Shi and the Divine Dragon, even if they were alone, they should have the ability to directly unseal 4 or 5 layers of the seals. Of course, that would only make Emperor Shi and the Divine Dragon go bankrupt. I fought for these 80 million gold dragon coins worth of cultivation resources for you. Of course, I also added my own achievement points. I hope you can grow quickly. Emperor, she said, I suggest that you try to let Huang Shanka forge a true supreme divine dragon weapon, the formless weapon. Spend tens of millions of gold dragon coins to buy the Dubhe stone liquid and gather 361 portions. Then, you can forge a formless weapon with 12 different battle patterns. A formless weapon with 12 different battle patterns was undoubtedly very attractive to Kong Shinmu. Now, he already had 70 to 80 portions of the Dubhe stone liquid. If he wanted to gather 361 portions, he would need to spend about 50 million gold dragon coins worth of resources. With the resources and financial resources of the entire divine dragon race, they could naturally help him gather 361 portions of the Dubhe stone liquid. But it would not be easy. Therefore, Emperor Shi told Kong Shinmu to make a decision earlier so that he could ask the higher-ups to help him gather it earlier. As for the remaining 30 million gold dragon coins, to Kong Shinmu, he would naturally use it to unseal the starry small world, which was this heaven and earth saint item. A heaven and earth saint item could be used for a critical strike at a critical moment. Its lethality was extremely strong, and as the number of layers unsealed increased, it could even kill supreme existences in seconds. Therefore, Kong Shinmu definitely had to nurture this item well. Okay, then I will listen to Master and gather 361 portions of the Dubhe stone liquid. Now, I still need 278 portions of the Dubhe stone liquid. Kong Shinmu checked the amount of the Dubhe stone liquid on him and said to Emperor Shi, Okay, I will inform the higher-ups and ask them to gather it. Emperor Xi's divine dragon smiled. By the way, Master, I want to find a permanent mid-level relic and go there to train. I want to see if I can get any more opportunities. Kong Shinmu continued, after exploring it, I plan to break through to the super divine dragon realm. A permanent mid-level relic. Go back and rest for 2 days. I will ask Moya to gather some information for you. You can choose one. Emperor Xi pondered for a moment and then nodded in agreement.
Kong Shinmu bowed and said, Thank you, Master.
I will probably go with 2 friends. I hope Master can apply for 2 more spots. A permanent mid-level relic. The higher-ups are eager for more people to go. Ha! Emperor Xi shook his head and said, You can bring as many people as you want. Of course, it is extremely dangerous. I hope you will be careful when you enter. The people you bring with you should not be too weak. Otherwise, they will not even have the ability to protect themselves. It is basically impossible to come out alive. Yes, I understand. Kong Shinmu nodded. Of course, he was clear about this. Even those ordinary mid-level relic were so dangerous, let alone the permanent mid-level relic. Not only did they face the danger of the relic itself, but there were also many old fellows from other races guarding the mid-level relic and constantly exploring it. Once they met, it would be a very dangerous situation. Either they killed the other party or they hid. However, hiding was not a solution either. In short, it was extremely dangerous. Kong Shinmu did not dare to be careless. Therefore, he left to rest. After Kong Shinmu left, Moya chatted with Emperor Xi. Emperor Xi, every permanent mid-level relic is extremely risky. How can you bear to let him go in and take the risk?
Moya didn't seem to understand.
Moya, you have been with him for so long. Don't you understand him? Chapter 50-58. Moya had been with Kong Shinmu for a long time recently, so she did understand Kong Shinmu a lot more. However, because of this, she was a little worried about Kong Shinmu. She was worried that after Kong Shinmu entered the middle-level relic, there would be no one to protect him. If something happened to him, she would not be able to help.
Why, Moya? Are you reluctant to let him go?
Emperor Xi pursed his lips and laughed lightly. In this half a year, have you developed feelings for him? Nonsense.
Moya was not shy. She retorted, I just see the shadow of my younger brother in him. Hearing this, Emperor Xi did not continue to tease her. Instead, he became serious and solemn.
Moya, the dead cannot come back to life. I know you have always missed your younger brother, but he cannot come back. Kong Shinmu is Kong Shinmu. He has his own path in life. So if he wants to go to the permanent middle-level relic this time, I will not stop him. However, it is indeed dangerous for him to enter the middle-level relic alone.
Moya frowned slightly.
None of the old fellows in the permanent middle-level relic are easy to deal with. It is a pity that we cannot go in and protect him.
Of course, who said it is not possible?
Emperor Xi narrowed his eyes. The permanent middle-level relic only has a limit on the level of the power of inheritance. There is no limit on the level of the power of nature. It is just that after entering, the power of nature will be suppressed. It is the same for Kong Shinmu and the others. If you really want to follow, you can still go in with them. However, if there is any danger, you will also have to bear the danger and face the danger with them. Wait until he decides which permanent relic to go to before you make your decision. Moya, I hope you can relax. Kong Shinmu naturally did not know the conversation between Moya and Emperor Xi after he left. Now, he would rest for 2 days and return to the Starry Sky Pocket World to see how Xueqi and the others were cultivating. At the same time, he would inform them to go to the permanent middle-level relic together. They were all trying to reach the 3rd level of the Transcendent God Inheritance. Although they were still very far away, everyone was improving very quickly. After all, they all had special cultivation resources prepared. 3 days later, Kong Shinmu saw Emperor Xi's mystical dragon once again, and then he saw Huang Shanka once again. 361 portions of Dubhe stone liquid had been gathered. The dragon gods had brought the Dubhe stone liquid to Emperor Xi and had left a quota of about 30 million gold dragon coins for materials and resources for Kong Shinmu. Next, Kong Shinmu needed to analyze the attributes of the Starry Sky small world. As for the attributes, he had to refer them to the table of raw materials. Emperor Shi had already given Kong Shinmu the table, along with the information on the permanent middle-level relic. Kong Shinmu, next, Grandmaster Huang Shanka will forge a transcendent dragon weapon for you, the formless weapon. As for the next few days, you can read up on the information about the permanent mid-grade ruins. You can also study the materials needed to unlock the seal on your Heaven and Earth Saint-grade artifact. Kong Shinmu nodded in agreement to the arrangement of Emperor Shi's mystical dragon. Huang Shanka's face was full of emotion. I didn't expect this. I really didn't expect that Kong Shinmu could actually get so much Dubhe stone liquid in just half a year. I really didn't expect that he could make such a huge contribution on the battlefield. This kid is indeed not bad. Emperor Shi's mystical dragon's beautiful eyes were filled with satisfaction. And the higher-ups are still discussing to give him an honorary title. Although we don't know what it is for now, it definitely won't be too low. In this war, there are not many people who are qualified to receive honorary titles. In total, there are less than 100 people who are qualified to receive honorary titles, and many of them are just beginner honorary titles. If Kong Shinmu has this, the contributions he has made are enough to rank him in the top 10 of the entire dragon gods. In this war, among the dragon warriors who participated, there were many who were stronger than Kong Shinmu, but there were very few who had made as big a contribution as him. After all, Kong Shinmu had changed the direction of the entire war. This kind of contribution was indeed rare. To forge a dragon weapon for such a young hero, I am also honored. Huang Shanka laughed and said, Emperor Shi, I will forge it in your main hall now. I have already brought all the tools I need to forge dragon weapons. He was a 7th level blacksmith, so it was normal for him to bring tools to forge dragon weapons with him. He had a small world with him. Although this small world was only a defective product, it could still allow living things to enter. He placed the forging furnace, tools and materials for forging dragon weapons in that broken small world, and then he could go in and forge it himself. His small world could not be compared to Kong Shinmu's Starry Sky small world. Kong Shinmu's Starry Sky small world, with the unsealing of the layers, would become extremely vast. It was even a small world now, with a radius of 10,000 miles. As for Huang Shanka's small world, it was just a spatial fragment the size of a courtyard. However, it was a relatively stable spatial fragment that could allow living things to enter. Even so, it was already an extremely rare treasure in the dragon god's world. As for Kong Shinmu's small world, no one knew about it yet. Only Moya sensed it, and Emperor Shi had some guesses. Naturally, the two women would not spread this information. Next, Huang Shanka went to forge a super dragon weapon for Kong Shinmu. This formless dragon weapon was the strongest dragon weapon he had ever forged in his life. Naturally, he had to put 120% of his effort into it. Other than the Dubhe stone liquid, he even provided all the other materials himself, in order to forge a peerless dragon weapon. As for Kong Shinmu, he returned to his courtyard residence and began to study the information about the permanent middle-level relics. At the same time, according to the list of materials and attribute resources provided by Emperor Shi, he began to study what materials were needed to unlock the Starry Sky Small World seal. This was also an extremely complicated work. It was not that there could be no mistakes, but once there was a mistake, it meant that more materials were needed to make up for it. In order to save resources, Kong Shinmu had to analyze very accurately so that he could analyze the attributes of the Starry Sky Small World and the types and quantities of materials needed to unlock the seal in the most efficient way. Of course, in order to save time, Kong Shinmu thought of a way. He went directly to the outside of the Iron Phoenix Fortress to find some Talisman Xueqi clan practitioners who had not yet evacuated. Most of these Talisman Xueqi clan practitioners were gathered in one place, waiting for their clan to surrender and rescue. Chapter 50-59. The Fu Xueqi clan cultivators who were still staying in the Iron Phoenix Fortress basically did not have any experts. Of course, there were still many Supreme God-level experts. Kong Shinmu could easily find Supreme God level 2 or 3 opponents. Now, the dragon gods were cleaning up these hidden Fu Xueqi clan invaders on a large scale. Of course, they did not want to kill them, but to capture them as captives. This would give them an advantage in the final negotiations. As for the Fu Xueqi clan invaders, they were hiding everywhere in the Iron Phoenix Fortress. Because the Supreme God level experts were already dead, they could only hide. If they fought on a large scale, they would only end up being sacrificed and captured. Therefore, hiding was their only choice. Unfortunately, in front of Kong Shinmu, hiding was of no use at all. Jiang Xinwu's sensory abilities were pushed to their limits. He immediately found a few supreme god-level talisman water tribe cultivators and used his heaven's deficiency power to devour their time, turning it into his own. In just 3 days, Kong Shinmu had already spent close to a month. Then, he had figured out all the information about the permanent mid-level relics. Then, he compared the table about the starry sky attributes. Kong Shinmu had already analyzed the types of cultivation resources needed to unlock the seal of this small world. It really needs about 40 million gold dragon coins. Kong Shinmu was a little depressed. The resources needed to unlock the seal that Emperor Shi had mentioned were indeed more accurate. The first layer needed 3 million, the second layer needed 10 million, and the third layer needed 30 million. And now, Kong Shinmu only had a quota of 30 million cultivation resources. Even if he included the achievement points of the Dragon Fortress, he was still short by a lot. It seems that I can only unlock the Starry Sky Small World twice now. Kong Shinmu thought to himself. However, he was not in a hurry. Unlocking the seal could be done slowly. The cultivation resources needed were massive. It was even more impossible for him to unlock more layers of the seal so quickly. After all, it required the strength of the entire clan to unlock the 9th layer of the seal of the sacred treasure of heaven and earth. And Kong Shinmu could unlock the 12th layer of the Starry Sky Small World. This gave Kong Shinmu a headache. 3 days later, Kong Shinmu returned to the Fortress of Iron Phoenix and handed the list of cultivation resources that he had analyzed to Emperor Shi Divine Dragon. Then, the next day, Emperor Shi's mystical dragon exchanged for 30 million gold dragon coins worth of cultivation resources for him. After Jiang Xinwu obtained the cultivation resources, he first returned to the courtyard where he lived. He began preparing to remove the seal on the Starry Sky Small World. The Starry Sky Pocket World had a total of 12 layers of engravings, but Kong Shinmu only intended to unlock the first 2 layers of engravings. He wanted to see how big the Starry Sky Small World could expand after the seal was removed. Kong Shinmu knew the method to unlock the Saint Grade Seal of Heaven and Earth. Every Saint Grade item had a different method of unsealing it. The method of unsealing the Starry Sky Minor World was recorded in one of the Starry Sky Minor World Starry Sky Minor World Starry Sky Sacred Hall. Kong Shinmu had studied it before. Hence, after obtaining the cultivation resources, he began to set up an array in his courtyard. In this array, Kong Shinmu continuously added 3 million gold dragon coins worth of cultivation resources in a certain order and attribute. The power of these materials was mixed into the array according to a certain ratio. Immediately after, Kong Shinmu placed the Starry Sky Small World in the center of the array and activated the array. With the activation of the array, Kong Shinmu could feel that the Starry Sky Small World was absorbing the various attributes of all the cultivation resources in the array. These resources of different attributes were directly integrated into the Starry Sky Small World according to a specific order. This was a small world and a saint-grade treasure of heaven and earth. Now, it finally ushered in the first moment of transformation. When the endless attributes of cultivation resources were absorbed into the Starry Sky Small World from the array, the Starry Sky Small World was also undergoing a huge change. The Starry Sky Small World that was originally tens of thousands of miles in circumference directly expanded outwards. Above the sky, more and more voids were being unearthed. This change, what a huge one! Gu Xinyue and the other 3 who were in the Starry Sky Small World were now looking around in disbelief. Looking out from the Starry Sky Sacred Palace in the Starry Sky Small World, one could see the endless attributes of the Starry Sky being activated in the surrounding void. As the external energy integrated into the Starry Sky Small World, the void of the entire Starry Sky Small World expanded. Originally, it was 10,000 miles in circumference. Now the circumference had even reached 30,000 miles, directly expanding 3 times. And this was only the linear distance expanded by 3 times, the area directly expanded by 9 times, and the volume of the space directly expanded by 27 times. This Starry Sky Small World was originally already very large. On the mainland, there were many Starry Sky sacred palaces built for different cultivators of the Starry Sky inheritance to enter for research and use. But now, the areas that had been expanded were all flat plains. It was a barren land, quietly waiting for people to reclaim it. Does it mean that I need to migrate here? Kong Shinmu did not know whether to laugh or cry. However, this idea was not impossible. In the Dragon Martial Continent, there were many people who could not awaken to become dragon martial artists.
For those people, Kong Shinmu might be able to let them enter the Starry Sky Small World and then absorb the Starry Sky inheritance power in the Starry Sky Small World to cultivate. Although this would not allow them to become super experts, after all, the cultivation resources in the Starry Sky Small World were limited. But as long as they could cultivate, they would be able to extend their lifespan and live a better life. Of course, it was not easy to say whether they would be willing to enter the Starry Sky Small World. After all, this was a barren world that no one had reclaimed. No matter what aspect of life, it was not very convenient. Moreover, Kong Shinmu also discovered that after the Starry Sky Small World expanded, the crack that originally connected the front and back sides of the Starry Sky continent finally disappeared. And the advancement temple that originally allowed them to cultivate to break through to the supreme god level appeared on the ground. In other words, the front and back sides of the continent were completely separated. Something's not right. Although there is no natural path, it seems that we can go to the backside of the continent through the temple. The shadow creatures on the backside of the continent are very strong and can be opponents for the inheritors of the Starry Sky power to improve. Moreover, now Kong Shinmu finally discovered that the world on the backside of the Starry Sky continent seemed to contain a lot of mineral resources. These mineral resources contained the cultivation resources that the inheritors of the Starry Sky power needed to cultivate. In other words, this small world was still waiting for Kong Shinmu and the others to reclaim it. Chapter 50-60. When Kong Shinmu unlocked the first layer of the Starry Sky Small World, the entire Starry Sky Small World expanded by at least 3 times. And then, Kong Shinmu's unlocking of the seals did not stop. He directly began to unlock the second layer of the Heaven and Earth Sacred Grade Formation. Kong Shinmu carved a more complicated second unlocking formation in the courtyard. Then, he integrated all the cultivation resources he had exchanged into this second formation. 10 million gold dragon coins worth of cultivation resources were all invested into this formation. Speaking of which, Jiang Shenwu was also quite surprised. Emperor Shi's divine dragon was actually able to help him obtain so many cultivation resources worth 80 million gold dragon coins as a reward. Although he had done a lot of things and even ended the war prematurely, Jiang Shenwu was still shocked. However, 80 million gold dragon coins wasn't a small sum. Even for a family like the Gu family in the 5 Extremes Mysterious Ice City, 80 million gold dragon coins was enough for them to develop for 100 years. However, since they can give me so many cultivation resources, it means that the compensation they can get from the 4 major races is much more than this tree. Of the 80 million gold dragon coins worth of cultivation resources, the compensation will definitely not exceed 10%. Kong Shinmu thought to himself. Of course, even if it was only 10%, it was already an extremely great gain. If it weren't for Emperor Shi's divine dragon, Jiang Shenwu wouldn't even be able to get the cultivation resources worth 8 million gold dragon coins. This was the reality. If Kong Shinmu himself had no power and no backing, the higher-ups of the dragon gods would not have given him so many cultivation resources as a reward. Everything was fought for by Emperor Shi for Kong Shinmu. There might even be some difficulties involved. It was just that Emperor Shi and the divine dragon did not tell Jiang Shenwu about them. As Kong Shinmu put the 10 million gold dragon coins worth of cultivation resources into the formation was activated. The power of all the cultivation resources swept towards the Starry Sky Small World. Like a whirlwind, they turned into waves of dense spiritual qi and were absorbed. The space within the small Starry Sky world expanded once again. The Starry Sky continent, which was originally 30,000 miles long, had expanded to 50,000 miles. Even more clouds had appeared in the sky, circling around the third ring of the Starry Sky Small World, forming a beautiful scene. The space of the Starry Sky Pocket World is indeed divided into 12 circles. The first circle is the starting area. This area isn't very big, but it's the core area of the small Starry Sky cosmos. Both the Starry Sky Shrine and the dark creatures on the dark side of the Starry Sky continent live here. The second circle is the area where the first seal is unlocked. It's a barren land, but it's also the most suitable place for people to explore. There's no danger, and there aren't any precious resources. There seems to be some special creatures in the third circle. Kong Shinmu saw some creatures that seemed to be very powerful in the newly expanded third circle of the small Starry Sky world. Within this area, it was mainly a swamp. A large swamp surrounded the entire continent of the Starry Sky Small World. The innermost area was the plains and forests, the core area of the small Starry Sky world. The second circle was a wasteland.
used for the development of people who cultivated the inheritance of the starry sky power. The third circle was the swamp area, the most common training area. In this area, Kong Shinmu sensed many cultivation resources needed to cultivate the inheritance of the starry sky power. Elemental creatures. The creatures in the swamp area were elemental creatures. These creatures weren't real life, but some creatures formed by the condensation of energy. Kong Shinmu sensed some kind of power source hidden in the depths of the swamp area, which could continuously condense these elemental creatures and maintain the number of elemental creatures within a certain range. The cultivators of the starry sky power who lived in this world could kill these elemental creatures to obtain some cultivation resources for the inheritance of the starry sky power. Kong Shinmu sensed that these elemental creatures weren't very strong, and there were even some that were extremely weak. They were probably used for cultivators who had just started cultivating to gain experience. However, the swamp area was divided into many different levels of areas. Some elemental creatures had the strength of a king or even an emperor. However, the strongest among them was only a peak emperor. This expanded third circle seemed to be a training ground for cultivators to advance to the peak emperor level. The core area of the small starry sky world is the Starry Sky Temple. The cultivation resources inside are very rich, but they aren't renewable resources. I'm afraid it can only be provided for the cultivation of about 100 people. If you want a race to rise, you still have to rely on other cultivation resources. The resources in the swamp are one of the sources, but the main ones are the mineral deposits on the back of the Starry Sky continent. Unfortunately, the dark creatures guarding these mineral deposits are too strong. Even I can't defeat them. In the expanded second and third circles, more dark creatures appeared on the back of the Starry Sky continent. These creatures were guarding more cultivation resources and mineral deposits. The mineral deposits in the core area are too precious, and their strength is extremely high. However, the dark creatures guarding them seem to have reached the supreme level. This discovery made Kong Shinmu speechless. However, he soon discovered that from the Starry Sky Temple in the core area to the dark area of the second circle, the mineral deposits there weren't particularly precious, but they could at least meet the cultivation needs of a race of 10,000 people. The dark creatures guarding there weren't that strong, and they were only at the peak emperor level. Kong Shinmu didn't plan to touch these dark creatures. After all, he knew that these creatures were for the races that had migrated here to cultivate the power of the Starry Sky inheritance. Moreover, Kong Shinmu had the authority of the Guardian Temple of the small Starry Sky world, so he didn't lack cultivation resources. The resources in the temple can at most support the cultivation of 100 inheritors of the Starry Sky power. In other words, I can cultivate 100 core inheritors of the Starry Sky power. Kong Shinmu thought to himself, and soon he couldn't help but smile bitterly. Was he really going to develop a Starry Sky race? He didn't have the idea of developing a race on his own. After all, this wasn't a trivial matter, and it wasn't easy to achieve. He wasn't a great person, and his thinking was simple. He just wanted to improve his strength and save his father. Chapter 5061. Kong Shinmu's Starry Sky Small World expanded to the third ring. He had already used up 13 million gold dragon coins worth of cultivation resources. It was a huge waste of money. However, Kong Shinmu also felt that after he unlocked the second seal of the Starry Sky Small World, he could already unleash an extremely strong power. He could mobilize a portion of the power in the Starry Sky Small World to launch a super powerful attack at a critical moment. The power of such an attack could even reach the level of a Transcendent God Stage 5. If I can unlock another seal, the super powerful attack of the Starry Sky Small World will reach the level of a peak Transcendent God. Moreover, such a super powerful attack doesn't seem to have a limit like other heaven and earth sacred items. It seems like I can use it continuously. However, it will consume the power stored in the Starry Sky Small World. Every time I launch a super powerful attack, I will initially consume the stored power of heaven and earth. However, if I launch it a second time, I will need to consume the power of the Starry Sky Shrine. Now that I'm at the level of a Transcendent God Stage 5, I don't need to consume too much power to launch a super powerful attack. However, I can't rely too much on this method. From now on, the Starry Sky Small World is my greatest asset. I can't kill the goose that lays the golden eggs. Of course, this can be used as a final trump card and a trump card to save my life. Kong Shinmu thought to himself. He didn't have any intention of developing a tribe now, so he put this matter to the back of his mind.
However, Gu Xinyue and the other three who were trying to break through could clearly feel the changes in the entire Starry Sky small world. Apart from them, Yin Fengling, who had started cultivating the power of the Starry Sky inheritance, also felt the changes. The power of the Starry Sky in the small world had become more intense, and it was more than 3 times stronger than before. This power was sprinkled down from the sky. The second and third rings of the sky that had been unlocked were constantly gathering and nurturing the power of the Starry Sky, causing the density of the power of the entire Starry Sky small world to increase by at least 3 times. This was similar to when he was in the Dragon Martial continent, where the heaven and earth spiritual energy was extremely thin. However, in the Dragon God's great world, the heaven and earth spiritual energy and the Dragon Mark energy became extremely dense. It was even possible that it was dozens of times or even hundreds of times denser than in the Dragon Martial continent. This was the nurturing power of heaven and earth. The Starry Sky pocket world had given birth to even stronger and denser Starry Sky energy. As a result, the efficiency of the cultivators cultivating the power of the Starry Sky became much faster. Yin Fengling had yet to receive any deity's Templar's resources, so Kong Xinmu didn't really trust him. Originally, he was just groping around, following the teachings of the Temple of Light to improve the cultivation of the power of the Starry Sky. Now that the mark of the Starry Sky small world had been removed, his rate of improvement had obviously sped up. Without obtaining any resources from the Divine Hall, his rate of improvement was clearly 3 times faster than before. Even for Gu Xinyue and the others who had obtained resources from the Divine Hall, the increased density of Starry Sky energy in the air was extremely beneficial to their cultivation. They don't plan to explore the second circle of wastelands for now. I have no intention of exploring the third circle of the swamp either. Kong Xinmu smiled. Gu Xinyue and the other 3 had indeed surpassed that level. However, once Kong Xinmu unlocked the third seal of the Starry Sky small world, what kind of world would appear? What kind of changes would happen to the Starry Sky small world then? It was hard to predict. Kong Xinmu couldn't be bothered to think too much about it. When he was sure that the Starry Sky small world had not undergone any special changes due to the unlocking of the 2 seals, he put the Starry Sky small world away again. From then on, his combat power had become even more terrifying. And on the second day, he finally received another piece of good news. That was, the formless weapon that Huang Shanka had forged for him was finally out. This was a transcendent dragon weapon. Basically, only Supreme God-level experts could exert its full power. But if Kong Xinmu obtained it now, he could exert 20 to 30% of its power. After all, he was an existence that was half a step into the Supreme God level. Kong Xinmu followed Emoya back to the castellan residence of the Fortress of Iron Phoenix. Then he saw Emperor Shi and the Dragon God, who were admiring the formless weapon, as well as Huang Shanka. This is the strongest masterpiece that I've ever forged in my life. Heaven-level transcendent dragon weapon. Formless weapon. I haven't named it yet. But the matter of naming it will, of course, be handed over to the owner of this transcendent dragon weapon. When she saw Kong Xinmu, Huang Shanka said with some excitement. Naming it? Kong Xinmu couldn't help but feel a little dumbfounded. There's no hurry. Listen to Master Huang Shanka introduce this dragon weapon first. The Dragon God Emperor said with a smile. She was also sizing up the transcendent dragon weapon in front of her, looking rather interested. And Kong Xinmu walked forward and saw the transcendent dragon weapon together with Emoya. He saw that it was a ball of light that kept changing shapes. This ball of light contained extremely strong power. Kong Xinmu could feel that within this ball of light, there were a total of 12 types of battle pattern power. Moreover, the power of these battle patterns could transform between each other. On the ball of light, there were 12 colors that corresponded to the 12 battle patterns. This is the formless weapon that was forged this time, the heaven-level transcendent dragon weapon. Within it, there are a total of 3,200 different battle patterns. There are a total of 12 types. These 12 battle patterns can be completely transformed between each other. For example, you can transform all 3,200 battle patterns into offensive battle patterns, defensive battle patterns, concealment battle patterns, void battle patterns, and so on. You can completely transform them freely. Now that you haven't reached the Supreme God level, you may only be able to control about 30% of the battle patterns. But that's already about 1,000 battle patterns. Compared to ordinary divine dragon weapons, it's already quite a lot more. This was something that Kong Xinmu understood. For example, the Phantom Ghost Book and the Great Compassion Sky Dragon Seal that he mainly used now, each only had 800 or 900 battle patterns. Among them, the Phantom Ghost Book had 320 offensive battle patterns, 240 concealment battle patterns, and 240 void battle patterns. In total, there were 800 battle patterns. As for the Great Compassion Sky Dragon Seal, it simply had 800 defensive battle patterns. Although the formless weapon in front of Kong Shin Mu could only activate 30% of its battle patterns for the time being, it was already much stronger than these two dragon weapons.
Moreover, the biggest feature of this formless weapon is that it has no fixed form. Other dragon weapons have one form when held in the hand, and another form when activated. There are only two forms. But this formless weapon is a formless dragon weapon. Chapter 5062. The new book, God of All Ages, has already gone viral on the internet. You can read it by clicking on my pen name. Kong Shin Mu walked forward and came to the light cluster. He could sense that it contained the power of 12 powerful battle runes. There were a total of 2,400 battle runes, which was a top-notch divine dragon weapon. It could even surpass a top-notch divine dragon weapon. Generally, a heaven-grade divine dragon weapon would only have 2,000 battle runes. However, Kong Shin Mu's formless weapon contained 2,400 battle runes. This number was simply terrifying.
With the addition of some brilliant effects, it could be said to be a divine weapon that was several times more powerful than an ordinary divine dragon weapon.
At the very least, it was more than 10 times stronger than Zhao Qingtian's divine dragon weapon. Moreover, the formless weapon could transform into different forms.
When it was needed for defense, all the battle runes would be transformed into a defensive form, and when it was needed for attack, it would be completely transformed into an offensive form.
If all of them were transformed into offensive battle runes, Kong Shin Mu's offensive power would be enhanced by more than 24 times. What a terrifying number it was. It almost allowed Kong Shin Mu to directly improve by 2 realms. It was the same in terms of defense. In other words, the effect of this formless weapon could almost increase the cultivation realm of a dragon martial artist by 2 realms. This would be a great improvement in normal times, let alone in a life-and-death situation. Such a powerful improvement could simply be unexpected, and Kong Shin Mu would then be able to kill him. In addition to the most basic offensive and defensive battle runes, this formless weapon also has speed battle runes, void battle runes, concealment battle runes. A total of 12 battle runes. Kong Shin Mu walked forward, stretched out his hand, and directly touched the light cluster. In that instant, he could feel the immense power contained within the ball of light. 2,400 battle runes. It's really extraordinary. Kong Shin Mu suddenly felt emotional. I'll name it Chen Xing. Heaven-grade divine dragon weapon, formless weapon, Chen Xing. As Kong Shin Mu stretched out his hand, the light cluster that Chen Xing had turned into continuously circulated in his hand. In this radiance, a long sword slowly condensed in Jiang Shenwu's hand. He had taken the initiative to let Chen Xing transform into the form of a long sword. This was the most common form of a dragon weapon, and it was also the least noticeable. Hence, Kong Shin Mu directly transformed Chen Xing into a long sword form to hide himself so that he wouldn't be exposed in advance. At the same time, Kong Shin Mu transformed all 2,400 battle runes in Chen Xing into concealment battle runes. The transformation process was extremely fast and was completed in almost an instant. Jiang Shenwu gave it a try. In a short span of a breath, he could even change the shape of the battle runes in Chen Xing at least 10 times. This transformation speed is because of the celestial heavenly stone liquid. Chen celestial battle runes in 3 Hin transforming through, said with a world. Spirit Chen is has, and has and is has. It's not bad to be able to transform 3 times in one breath. It turned out that the amount of celestial heavenly stone liquid could affect the transformation speed. Kong Shin Mu hadn't thought of this. He was glad that he had listened to Emperor Shi's words and used about 50 million gold dragon coins to exchange for more celestial heavenly stone liquid. Although it looked good to transform 3 times in one breath, it wouldn't be able to produce an explosive effect in a short period of time. However, if he could transform 10 times in one breath, Kong Shin Mu would be able to control Chen Xing more easily, and he would be able to produce more changes in a short period of time. When Kong Shin Mu stretched out his hand and turned Chen Xing into a long sword, the formless weapon aura in the field dissipated. 12 different types of battle runes should be enough. It's suitable for changing in various situations.
Huang's celestial heavenly stone said with a smile. This is probably the strongest weapon I have forged in my life.
Thank you, Senior.
Kong Shinmu was naturally very grateful for Huang's celestial heavenly stone's help. Without Huang's celestial heavenly stone, he wouldn't have been able to obtain such a powerful formless weapon. Chen Xing was now a priceless treasure that belonged to Kong Shinmu. It was so valuable that no matter how much others offered, Kong Shinmu wouldn't sell it. This formless weapon was the strongest weapon he had before he reached the supreme level. It was even 2 or 3 times more powerful than the so-called top-notch divine dragon weapons of others. Therefore, Kong Shinmu was very satisfied now. Huang's celestial heavenly stone's forging level was indeed quite good. Even if the Chen Xing hadn't been integrated with any dazzling materials, its power was already similar to the Phantom Ghost Book and the Great Compassion Dragon Seal that had been dazzled. Of course, what should be dazzled would still be dazzled.
How many times can this Chen Xing be dazzled at most?
Kong Shinmu asked curiously.
This Chen Xing is forged with haze metal.
Huang's celestial heavenly stone is extremely malleable, and I've added 361 portions of Heaven's core stone liquid. I've already calculated that it can be dazzled 7 times on the Chen Xing.
7 dazzles. Kong Shinmu was a little shocked. Even though he was prepared, he was still taken aback. 7 dazzles meant that the Chen Xing could still be strengthened 7 times. Similar to the Heaven's precious stone, it could increase the effect of battle runes by 50%. As long as the Heaven's precious stone was dazzled, the Chen Xing would have 3,600 battle runes, and its attack and defense would be increased by 36 times. The 9 precious stone would increase the attack and defense by 9 times. It would also be a dazzling material that Kong Shinmu liked very much. The brilliant stone could completely block a super strong attack. According to the Chen Xing's strength, after dazzling the brilliant stone, it could at least block an attack from a supreme powerhouse. Of course, it couldn't be a supreme powerhouse.
If it was just an ordinary supreme powerhouse, the Chen Xing could easily block it after dazzling the brilliant stone.
Unfortunately, it could only block it once in a short period of time.
It might not be of much use to others, but once he encountered an opponent of this level, he would still die. However, Kong Shinmu was different. He specifically instructed Huang's celestial heavenly stone to add a type of specter battle rune to the 12 types of battle runes. This was a type of battle rune that could produce specter energy from the void. As long as the Chen Xing's battle runes were all converted into specter battle runes, it could instantly recover a lot of energy. This energy could then be replenished by the brilliant stone. As for how long it would take to replenish the brilliant stone, Kong Shinmu still had to test it out.
He couldn't guess at the moment.
After forging the Chen Xing, Huang's celestial heavenly stone had almost never touched it. After all, Kong Shinmu was the owner of the Chen Xing. Huang's celestial heavenly stone brought the Chen Xing over and handed it to Kong Shinmu. As for its performance, Kong Shinmu had to study it himself.
Go and try out the power of the Chen Xing first.
Emperor, she said to Kong Shinmu with a smile. This was equivalent to letting him leave first to try out this brand new dragon weapon.
Yes. Kong Shinmu naturally couldn't wait. Come with me.
Chapter 5063. Kong Shinmu followed Emoya and soon arrived at the training field of the Fortress of Iron Phoenix. In this martial arts practice field, there were still many martial arts discussion stages. They were all places for the dragon warriors of the Iron Phoenix Fortress to train and learn from each other. The arrival of Kong Shinmu and Emoya quickly attracted the attention of many people.
How are we going to test the power?
Kong Shinmu was still a little puzzled. After all, Emoya was the one who brought him here.
You can spar with me.
That's enough.
Emoya smiled warmly.
No one knew what she looked like under the white veil, but just from her voice, one could tell that she was definitely a gentle and beautiful girl. Kong Shinmu was a little surprised to hear her words.
Spar with you.
Kong Shinmu didn't know how strong Emoya was before, but he actually wanted to spar with her. Although Kong Shinmu guessed that Emoya was definitely very strong, it was just a guess. It seemed that his guess would soon be confirmed.
Yes, spar with me.
Emoya didn't seem surprised at all. Instead, she said gently, "Aren't you going to the intermediate permanent relic?"
"I'll go with you."
"So before that, we can spar with each other and understand each other's strength so that we can cooperate better."
Sure.
Kong Shinmu became serious when he heard what she said. His expression became extremely solemn. He turned the Chen Xing into a long sword in his hand and felt the power of 2,400 battle runes flowing in it.
Dragon transformation. Jiang Shenwu immediately transformed into a pitch-black divine dragon, and the Chen Xing sword in his hand turned into countless blue sword qi, circling around the pitch-black divine dragon. It looked like the stars in the sky and was extremely powerful. Mo Ya, on the other hand, simply stood on the stage. She didn't look like she had any power at all. Kong Shinmu didn't dare to release too much power at the start. At least, he didn't use the power of the starry sky. Therefore, he just used the power of the divine dragon inheritance to gradually condense and release the devouring power in his body and integrate it into the Chen Xing battle runes. Speed battle runes. Kong Shinmu changed all the Chen Xing battle runes into speed runes. Unfortunately, he could only exert 1/3 of the power. 2,400 battle runes were equivalent to the power of 800 battle runes that Kong Shinmu exerted. The 800 speed runes made Kong Shinmu's black dragon body suddenly accelerate and rush towards Mo Ya. Jiang Shenwu thought that no matter how weak Mo Ya was, she couldn't be weaker than a peak emperor-level warrior. So, he directly used the inheritance power of his peak emperor-level dragon god clan and the effect of Chen Xing's speed battle tattoo to release the void dragon sky raising break at lightning speed. The effect of the speed runes was fully activated. Not only did it make Kong Shinmu's flying speed faster, but it also made Kong Shinmu's speed of releasing the dragon martial technique increase by more than 2 times. A terrifying power erupted at this moment. 6 black dragon shadows condensed from the void and spat out 6 pitch-black dragon breaths. These 6 pitch-black dragon breaths directly enveloped Mo Ya's snow-white body. There was a loud explosion of light. Kong Shinmu was a little worried, but then, a burst of snow-white brilliance erupted from where Mo Ya was. This burst of snow-white brilliance condensed into a layer of flowing barrier that protected Mo Ya's entire body. Then, the 6 pitch-black dragon breaths exploded and landed on Mo Ya's snow-white brilliance barrier. An amazing power erupted in an instant. Although Kong Shinmu didn't use the power of the starry sky inheritance, nor did he use any powerful means, because of the nature of the devouring power, this move was enough to break the defense of an ordinary peak emperor-level expert. However, for Mo Ya, Kong Shinmu's attack didn't even seem to be a tickle. She didn't move at all. She didn't even raise her hand. The snow-white brilliance completely blocked Kong Shinmu's attack. This is the divine power. A kind of natural power. This is the first time I've seen Senior Mo Ya make a move in front of me. She doesn't make a move, does she? She's just defending. However, it seems that little brother Kong Shinmu is in trouble. Haha. Because of this war, Kong Shinmu had made great contributions in the war and even made the 4 clans retreat in advance. This kind of contribution made people have a very deep impression of Kong Shinmu. Not to mention that the Dragon Martial Artist Corps of Fortress Iron Phoenix were all subordinates of Emperor Shi's Divine Dragon. They could be considered as Kong Shinmu's own people. Now, many people were ready to watch the show from the sidelines. Kong Shinmu also heard the conversations around him and couldn't help but feel a little surprised. Looking at Mo Ya, who was bathed in the white light, he thought to himself, she actually also cultivates the natural power, and it's the divine power? No wonder he couldn't feel her cultivation of the divine dragon inheritance. It turned out that she didn't cultivate the divine dragon inheritance at all. However, the divine power was also a kind of natural power. In other words, Mo Ya didn't need to change into any form of inheritance. She could purely rely on this human body in front of her to fight and explode with extremely strong power. This was the same principle as the inheritance of the power of the starry sky. The natural power was a self-cultivation method invented by the human clan in ancient times. Kong Shinmu, are you looking down on me? Mo Ya's voice carried a hint of anger. Show me all your strength. She actually looked down on Kong Shinmu. However, Kong Shinmu also felt that the other party's defense was indeed more than enough with his current strength. Even his void dragon sky raising break couldn't shake the other party's snow-white brilliance barrier in the slightest. Therefore, Kong Shinmu had no choice but to explode with stronger power. He still didn't use the power of the starry sky inheritance. Anyway, he just wanted to try out the power of the Chen Xing offensive battle runes.
Kong Shinmu transformed all the dragon soldier Chen Xing's battle runes into offensive battle runes and directly unleashed the 9th stage ultimate roaring dragon explosion towards Mo Ya. The 9th stage ultimate roaring dragon explosion was the strongest dragon martial technique that Kong Shinmu cultivated at the moment. For Kong Shinmu, his strongest move was the 9th stage ultimate roaring dragon explosion without using the power of the Starry Sky inheritance. Moreover, the Chen Xing dragon soldier had transformed all the battle runes into offensive battle runes. Although he could only use 1/3 of them, it was still equivalent to the strength of 800 offensive battle runes. 9th stage ultimate roaring dragon explosion. 9 dark divine dragon shockwaves swept towards Mo Ya from the direction of the divine dragon body that Kong Shinmu was in. An extremely terrifying shockwave swept through the surroundings at this moment, and it even caused the entire arena to shake. Chapter 50-64. The 9th stage extreme Dao flood dragon explosion roared as it charged towards Mo Ya. Mo Ya was still standing in the same spot. She didn't seem to be moving, but the snow-white brilliance on her body had completely condensed to form a physical barrier. This barrier seemed to have a stronger defensive ability than the previous light barrier. As for Jiang Shenwu's 9th stage extreme Dao horn dragon explosion, it very quickly landed on her physical barrier. Soon, the power of the 9th level ultimate dragon explosion exploded. The terrifying power was completely reflected and bombarded in front of Kong Shinmu. It can be reflected? Jiang Shenwu's expression changed slightly. The celestial star dragon weapon immediately transformed into 2,400 defensive battle runes. At this moment, it transformed into a starry barrier that protected his entire body. With a loud bang, Kong Shinmu was sent flying by his own power. He was in disbelief. He hadn't expected Mo Ya, who had always looked gentle and weak, to be so powerful. At the very least, when Kong Shinmu used the Chen Xing dragon weapon, he couldn't defeat her. He couldn't even make her move. This triggered Kong Shinmu's competitive spirit. Phantom Ghost Book. Kong Shinmu's Phantom Ghost Book appeared. At the same time, the Nothingness Ruby Stone and the 9-layered Ruby Stone were fully activated. 81 levels. Ultimate Dragon Explosion. A total of 81 terrifying black divine dragon lights condensed in Kong Shinmu's body. He had originally been sent flying by his own power. However, at this moment, he shuttled through the void and appeared above Mo Ya in a flash. Following that, 81 black dragon breaths exploded with a loud bang. Initially, Kong Shinmu was a little unconvinced. He didn't believe that Mo Ya could possess such terrifying power. However, as the 81 dark dragon breaths descended, Mo Ya still showed no signs of moving. The layer of divine power condensed into a snow-white barrier, completely blocking his attack. Before Kong Shinmu could react, he realized that his attack had been absorbed by the snow-white barrier and then rebounded. What the hell is this? Mo Ya's strength was truly shocking. When Kong Shinmu sensed the rebounding force, he immediately unleashed the defensive power of the Great Compassion Dragon Seal and formed a golden barrier to defend himself. The holy power was unbreakable. Under the snow-white barrier, Mo Ya was still standing calmly on the arena. She did not look like she had suffered from Kong Shinmu's fierce attack at all. Kong Shinmu, why are you so anxious? Mo Ya covered her mouth and chuckled. It's impossible for you to defeat me with your current strength. Didn't we agree to let you test the power of Chen Xing? Why did you change to another warrior? Hearing this, Kong Shinmu could not help but blush. He had been flustered by the power of his own attack. Although he had managed to block it with the Great Compassionate Sky Dragon mark, he had still been intimidated by Mo Ya's power. Senior Mo Ya, what level are you exactly? Kong Shinmu smiled bitterly. Originally, he had thought that Mo Ya's force of nature was just slightly stronger and had reached a higher level of supreme god. But now, it seemed that his inherited techniques of the dragon gods could not do anything to her. Thinking of how she addressed Emperor Shi and Zai, he felt that she was not as simple as he had thought. Just like your master. Mo Ya said this rather calmly. But this sentence made Kong Shinmu instantly freeze on the spot. Just like Emperor Shi's divine dragon. That meant that Mo Ya actually had supreme strength. How shocking was this? Mo Ya looked like a weak woman, and her style of doing things was also extremely gentle. At one point, Kong Shinmu even thought that Mo Ya was just a maid of Emperor Shi's divine dragon. But now it seemed that he had guessed completely wrong. Emoya had actually cultivated the divine power to an unparalleled level. She was a supreme super expert. In terms of the cultivation of the force of nature, she had already gone much further than Kong Shin Mu. No wonder she, Emperor Shi Divine Dragon, and Zai Divine Dragon all called each other by their names. Because the two of them were basically existences of the same level. Senior, you are really unexpected.
Kong Shin Mu smiled bitterly. Not really. Emoya chuckled softly. Actually, why do you think I have been following you for the past 6 months? It is to protect you.
In the past 6 months, I have helped you get rid of many opponents.
Hearing this, several scenes suddenly appeared in Kong Shin Mu's mind.
Sometimes when he was fighting on the battlefield outside the Outland Fortress, he even felt that super existences stronger than him, who were above the 7th level of Supreme God, seemed to have already discovered his appearance.
At that time, he wanted to hide and avoid them. But very quickly, the aura disappeared.
Previously, he had thought that he had successfully hidden himself, but now it seemed that Emoya had just helped him get rid of them.
So, it is your own fault for not observing carefully. Emoya pursed her lips and smiled gently. All right. Kong Shin Mu could only shake his head.
This formless weapon, Chen Xing, is indeed very strong and easy to use. However, it is still lacking some things. I need some dazzling materials that can increase the combat power of the Chen Xing warrior by several times.
Do you want me to accompany you to buy dazzling materials?
Emoya suggested.
All right.
Kong Shin Mu only thought for a moment before nodding. Buying dazzling materials was a very important matter as it would affect everything for Chen Xing in the future. Which 7 dazzling materials to choose was too important for Chen Xing, the formless weapon. Choosing which 7 materials to spend would mean which aspect of strengthening Chen Xing in. As for which dazzling materials were more useful and suitable for the formless weapon, if Emoya followed him, she could also give him some suggestions. As for Emoya, now that Kong Shin Mu knew her strength and identity, he did not think too much about her. He had also cultivated the power of nature. Kong Shin Mu did not feel that he was an anomaly. However, looking at Emoya's expression and the chatter of the dragon warriors around the arena, Kong Shin Mu knew that things were not so simple. Divine power was different from the power of the starry sky. It was a kind of power of nature that had been circulating in the dragon god's world, but there were not many people who cultivated it. While the surrounding dragon warriors were discussing, Kong Shin Mu received news that there was a divine power temple in the dragon god's world. In this temple, the inheritance of divine power could be imparted.
Chapter 5065.
For the ordinary practitioners of the Dragon God clan, the disciples of the Dragon God clan who cultivated the divine power were basically failures. Because only those who could not inherit the awakened divine dragon blood would cultivate the divine power. So, under normal circumstances, those who cultivated the divine power were relatively low-key. For example, the girl in front of Kong Shin Mu, Emoya, was also very low-key. Although her strength could even be compared with Emperor Shi's divine dragon, Zai divine dragon, and other supreme experts, she was very low-key in both her actions and her style. No one could tell that she was actually a supreme expert. So, in this case, Emoya's identity was more sensitive. Of course, after all, she was a supreme expert, and she had a good relationship with Emperor Shi's divine dragon and Zai divine dragon. Her status in the dragon gods was naturally not bad. Even if someone looked down on her, they would not show it in front of her. As for when they were in the Fortress of Iron Phoenix, the dragon warriors of the Fortress of Iron Phoenix were naturally very respectful to Emoya. That's a senior-level figure, after all. Moreover, in the war at the Fortress of Iron Phoenix, Emoya had participated in the war and saved many people's lives. These people were extremely grateful to her. Let's go to the Holy Land of 5 Extremes Mysterious Ice to buy things. Emoya said with a smile. The Holy Land of 5 Extremes Mysterious Ice is quite complete. However, you only need to choose 5 brilliant materials. As for the other 2, Emperor Shi and I will prepare one for you. Hearing her words, the first thing that came to Kong Shin Mu's mind was to thank her. Thank you, Senior. But soon he had some doubts.
But, why is Senior so good to me? And can supreme experts go to the intermediate relic?
I am good to you because you are Emperor Shi's disciple, Emoya said softly. As for the intermediate relic, we inheritors of the power of nature will not be restricted from entering. However, after entering, we can only use the strength equivalent to the peak of the Emperor level. Hearing this, Kong Shinmu immediately nodded.
In other words, people like me can also enter the intermediate relic.
However, the power of inheritance of the starry sky will be limited to the peak of the emperor level. Then he was a little nervous.
Doesn't that mean that if Senior enters the intermediate relic, she can only use the strength of the peak of the emperor level? Doesn't that mean?
Isn't it very easy to be killed?
Emoya smiled gently. You're thinking too much. Even if our strength is suppressed to the peak emperor stage, we still have many more tricks up our sleeves than the average peak emperor stage. Of course, there is still the possibility of death, but it's just not that high. Then I'm sorry to trouble Senior to accompany me on this adventure.
Kong Shinmu's words came from the bottom of his heart.
It's fine. Emoya only said these two words softly and didn't say anything else. One day later. On a sunny day, Kong Shinmu and Emoya returned to the 5 Extreme Black Ice Holy Land. Gu Xinyue was also walking with them. Gu Xinyue also wanted to prepare some emergency items for this trip to the intermediate relics, such as some recovery elixirs and so on. After all, permanent intermediate relics were definitely dangerous. For a young dragon martial artist like her, it could be said to be a narrow escape from death. Fortunately, if he was with Kong Shinmu, Emoya, and the others, it would be safer. Of course, if he wanted to obtain better items and obtain more rewards, he would have to take risks. Kong Shinmu and the two girls once again arrived at the treasure pavilion where they had previously purchased their items. The shopkeeper of the treasure pavilion immediately came out to welcome them. Little brother Jiang. Welcome again. What do you need this time? Mainly I need dazzling materials. Kong Shinmu didn't plan to hide anything, so he straightforwardly stated his purpose. The shopkeeper brought the 3 of them to the dazzling materials counter. There were thousands of dazzling materials on sale here. Among them, the more commonly used types were more plentiful. For example, dazzling materials like the Heaven Shocking Gem could increase the effect of battle runes on a battle weapon by 50%. 100 battle runes were equivalent to the power of 150 battle runes. 1,000 battle runes were equivalent to the power of 1,500 battle runes. For example, the formless weapon, Chen Xing, that Kong Shinmu had obtained had a total of 2,400 battle runes. If he used the Heaven Shocking Gem to dazzle it, it would be equivalent to 3,600 battle runes. This was the basic dazzling material, and the price of the Heaven Shocking Gem was not too expensive, so most dragon martial artists could afford it. However, Kong Shinmu didn't plan to use the ordinary Heaven Shocking Gem to dazzle the Chen Xing this time. After all, the formless weapon was a super godly dragon weapon, and it would accompany Kong Shinmu for a long time. It would be too wasteful to use the ordinary Heaven Shocking Gem to dazzle a super godly dragon weapon of this quality. What Jiang Shenwu wanted was that kind of heaven-shaking gem that had been refined. Many dazzling materials could be refined. As for the refined Heaven Shocking Rose Tone, its effect would be slightly stronger than the Heaven Shocking Rose Tone. As for how much stronger, it would depend on what was used to refine it, and the level of refinement. The effect would be completely different. For example, Kong Shinmu remembered that there was a decent Heaven Shocking Gem in the treasure pavilion. This Heaven Shocking Gem has been refined thrice, and each refinement increased its effect by 10%. The shopkeeper excitedly introduced it to Kong Shinmu. In other words, this refined Heaven Shocking Gem can increase the effect of your battle runes by 80%. A battle rune with 1,000 battle runes is equivalent to 1,800 battle runes. It is 30% more effective than an ordinary Heaven Shocking Gem. The price of this refined Heaven Shocking Gem is relatively cheap compared to its effect. It only costs 250,000 gold dragon coins. A Heaven Shocking Gem that had been refined thrice was indeed quite rare. Moreover, a Heaven Shocking Gem that had been refined thrice had increased its effect by 10%, which meant that all 3 refinements were perfect. It wasn't that there weren't better Heaven Shocking Gems, but that a Heaven Shocking Gem that had been refined thrice could basically only be used by supreme powerhouses. The effect would only increase by 10%, but the price would be more than 10 times more expensive. This was because the difficulty of the 4th refinement was abruptly higher than the previous 3 refinements. Therefore, to Kong Shinmu, this refined Heaven Shocking Gem's price-performance ratio was already quite suitable. Chapter 5066. Although it was worth 250,000 gold dragon coins, It was a relatively expensive item for the treasure pavilion. It was even equivalent to the total amount that Kong Shinmu had spent on his last shopping trip. However, to the current Kong Shinmu, 250,000 gold dragon coins was really nothing. In the past half a year, he had not only obtained a lot of Dubhe stone liquid, but he had also accumulated a lot of achievement points. He had also stolen a lot of cultivation resources from his opponents. After converting everything, Kong Shinmu still had more than 1,000,000 gold dragon coins on him. Therefore, 250,000 gold dragon coins were nothing to him. A perfect thrice-refined heavenly gemstone. Kong Shinmu paid with satisfaction and accepted the heavenly gemstone. Then, he found a relatively cheap dazzling material. Although it was cheap, it was still very rare. It was just that most people didn't need it. The effect of this dazzling material was that when it illuminated more than 3 types of battle patterns, the effect of each additional battle pattern would be increased by 10%. This was equivalent to another type of heavenly gemstone. It was impossible to illuminate a battle weapon with 2 of the same materials. However, this dazzling material wasn't a type of heavenly gemstone. It was the myriad crystals. Ordinary battle weapons didn't need the myriad crystals at all. This was because ordinary battle weapons would at most have 3 types of battle patterns. For example, Kong Shinmu's Phantom Ghost Book was already the limit for ordinary battle weapons. However, the myriad crystals were only effective on battle weapons with more than 3 types of battle patterns. Furthermore, the myriad crystals weren't very effective on battle weapons with only 4 or 5 types of battle patterns. It could only increase the effect of the battle patterns by 10% or 20%. However, the myriad crystals were the most suitable dazzling material for Kong Shinmu's formless weapon star. This was because there were 12 different types of battle patterns inside the formless weapon star. These 12 battle patterns, when combined with the myriad crystals, could increase the effect of each battle pattern by 90%. It was equivalent to doubling the effect. This effect was even stronger than the effect of the thrice-refined sky-shocking gemstone. It was so strong that it was terrifying. This was also why Emperor Shi's mystical dragon and Huang Shanka had hoped that Kong Shinmu would use more costs to exchange for the Dubhe stone liquid, so that the formless weapon he forged would have more types of battle patterns. Not only did it allow for more variations in battle, but it also increased the overall strength of the battle soldiers. The shocking gem increased the effect of battle runes by 80%, while the myriad crystals increased the effect of battle runes by 90%. It added up to 170% of the battle pattern's effect, which was more than double. If these 2 dazzling materials were to be absorbed, the formless weapon Chen Xing's original 2,400 battle runes would be equivalent to 4,080 battle runes. If these battle patterns were completely transformed into offensive battle patterns, then the attack power that Kong Shinmu could unleash would be 40 times stronger than the initial one. Who in the same realm could withstand an attack that was 40 times stronger than normal? And this was only the most basic transformation of the formless weapon Chen Xing, which was also the 2 most basic dazzling materials that Kong Shinmu had prepared for it. In fact, the Chen Xing could be dazzled 7 times, and each time was the greatest improvement. The myriad crystals are worth 50,000 gold dragon coins. Although they are rare, most people wouldn't buy them. Kong Shinmu paid with satisfaction and accepted the myriad crystals. The value of the diverse crystal stone was actually very high. After all, it was produced in too little quantities. Unfortunately, there were too few people who could use it. In fact, there wasn't a single person in the entire 5 Extremes Dark Ice Holy Land who could use it. Naturally, the price of this item couldn't go up. Apart from these 2 dazzling materials that could enhance the effect of battle runes, Kong Shinmu also planned to give the Chen Xing some more functional effects. For example, the Splendor Gemstone and the Divine Seal Gemstone. These 2 gemstones were used by Kong Shinmu to dazzle the Great Compassion Sky Dragon Seal, which was a defensive dragon weapon. It still brought a lot of benefits to Kong Shinmu. The Splendor Gemstone could use the war weapon's defensive runes as a foundation. Together with the cultivator's own cultivation base, they could form an extremely strong defensive barrier. When Kong Shinmu had not reached the peak of the Emperor level, the Splendor Gemstone could already block the attacks of high-level Transcendent Gods. If Kong Shinmu had reached the first stage of the Transcendent God level, the Splendor Gemstone could even block the attacks of ordinary Supreme Gods. Of course, if he really fought a Supreme God one-on-one, he definitely wouldn't be a match. Even if he could block it once, it would only be once. After blocking it once,
Kong Shinmu's devouring power wouldn't be able to devour his opponent's power in time for the Splendor Gemstone to recover. Then he would still die. It's better not to use this kind of thing that surpasses one's own ability. Most importantly, I have the starry small world. I'm just a step away from unsealing the third layer of the seal. When that time comes, I'll be able to deal with opponents at the peak of the transcendent god level. I also only have one chance, but this starry small world seal has to be unsealed sooner or later. Kong Shinmu thought to himself. He was very clear about how to choose the Splendor Gemstone. Although the formless weapon Splendor Gemstone could be Splendor 7 times because it was made of the ancient material shock metal, Kong Shinmu still didn't want to waste even a single time. Currently, the formless weapon Splendor Gemstone could only be Splendor by 40 times. Regardless of whether it was converted into offensive, defensive, or void battle patterns, it was only around 40 times. This was the effect of the refined heavenly precious stone and the myriad crystals. Therefore, Kong Shinmu felt that it wasn't enough. It was said that the amplification of supreme dragon weapons could reach more than 100 times. Therefore, it wasn't enough. If the 9-layered gemstone is used for splendor, it can make any technique released by a dragon martial artist directly become 9 times. Attack, it can turn into 9 attacks. Defense can also be turned into 9 layers of defense. This is an excellent gemstone. Unfortunately, it's not the best gemstone. The best splendor material for this kind of multiple attacks was still the 33 divine feathers. The 33 divine feathers were said to be the best splendor material obtained by a supreme expert from a super relic on the chaos battlefield. In the entire world of the dragon gods, there were less than 100 of them. Only the relic of the ancient divine feathers would have this kind of splendor material. After splendor of the 33 divine feathers on a battle weapon, it could make the battle weapon release up to 33 attacks, defenses, and so on. One could imagine how powerful this thing was. For example, when Jiang Shenwu used the 9-stage Extreme Dao Flood Dragon Burst, there should be 9 bursts of darkness energy each time. And when he used the 33 Heavens Divine Plume Brilliance, there should be close to 300 bursts of darkness energy. Chapter 5067. Of course, it wasn't easy to get a dazzling material like the 33 Heaven Divine Feathers. Kong Shinmu had seen one in the treasure pavilion before. It was priced at 3.5 million gold dragon coins. This price was considered quite high. Kong Shinmu believed that he could get it if he haggled a little. The 33 Heaven Divine Feathers weren't as invincible as he imagined. It wasn't like he could directly use the Dragon Martial technique to unleash 33 attacks. There were certain conditions. At the start of the battle, the power of the 33 Heaven Divine Feathers hadn't been awakened yet. He could only unleash 9 attacks. However, as the battle continued, the 33 Heaven Divine Feathers would absorb power from heaven and earth. The power would become denser and denser until he could unleash 33 attacks. In other words, the dazzling effect of the 33 Heaven Divine Feathers was the best in a protracted battle. This was perfect for Kong Shinmu. Kong Shinmu was originally suitable for protracted battles and focused on defense. In the future, after the Divine Dragon's blood essence increased in grade, he would definitely focus on defense when fighting with the power of the dragon gods. He would first put himself in an invincible position before considering a counterattack. The 33 Heaven Divine Feathers would be his strongest weapon for a counterattack. Moreover, even if he wanted to kill his opponent in an instant, the 33 Heaven Divine Feathers could unleash 9 attacks that weren't any weaker than the 9-layered gemstone. 40 times the strength of the attack, 33 attacks stacked together, it was simply hopeless. Kong Shinmu felt that when he reached the first level of the Divine Dragon's blood essence, he might be able to defeat the 4th level of the Transcendent God. It was a pity that he hadn't reached the first level of the Transcendent God and couldn't unleash the full power of Chen Xing. At most, he could only fight to a draw with the 3rd level of the Transcendent God. Refined gemstone, numerous crystals, and 33 Heaven Divine Feathers. There are 3 dazzling materials in total. 33 attacks and 33 defenses. It was quite comfortable to use them to deal with ordinary attacks. There were 4 left. 2 of them were gifts from Mo Ya and Emperor Shi's Mystical Dragon Association. He didn't need to consider them. This meant that Kong Shinmu had to choose 2 more dazzling materials himself. As for the 33 Heavens Divine Plume, Kong Shinmu didn't have enough gold dragon coins to buy it. However, he could take out a lot of materials as collateral.
On this point, the shopkeeper of the treasure pavilion also agreed after consulting the elders behind him. After all, Kong Shinmu had Emperor Shi as his backer. Emperor Shi's prestige as a mystical dragon was much greater than he had imagined. Therefore, Kong Shinmu directly used the materials as collateral, and the treasure pavilion completely accepted it. Generally speaking, the treasure pavilion would definitely not accept this kind of credit. After all, once the person died, the debt would be completely erased. With Kong Shinmu's current level of cultivation, he could die at any time. But with Emperor Shi's divine dragon backing him up, things would be different. Even if Kong Shinmu accidentally died, the treasure pavilion could still ask Emperor Shi's divine dragon to pay for it.
Existences at the level of Emperor Shi and the divine dragon would not go so far as to go back on their word.
Therefore, Kong Shinmu directly obtained the 33 Heavens divine plume. Next, Kong Shinmu continuously searched for thousands of dazzling materials. Unfortunately, he didn't find anything suitable. Some dazzling materials had good effects, but Kong Shinmu felt that he was still far from his goal. He couldn't strengthen the formless weapon Chen Xing to the level he wanted. I'll leave 2 spots for now. For now, 3 dazzling effects are enough. In the end, Kong Shinmu gave up. The choice of 7 dazzling materials was indeed difficult, but Kong Shinmu didn't feel conflicted. Since he couldn't decide for now, he wouldn't choose for now. He would leave the spots empty for now. Anyway, at this stage, the formless weapon Chen Xing that Kong Shinmu used could not be used to its full power. If he really wanted to use the Chen Xing's full power, Kong Shinmu still had to reach the transcendent level. Before that, Kong Shinmu planned to adapt to the Chen Xing's fighting style. If he could improve his compatibility with the Chen Xing and their minds were connected, Kong Shinmu believed that his combat power would be stronger. Moreover, after cooperating with the Chen Xing for a certain period of time, Kong Shinmu would understand what kind of dazzling materials were more suitable for a transcendent divine dragon weapon like the Chen Xing. After all, the formless weapon was extremely rare in the entire dragon gods. Before Kong Shinmu, there were only 2 known of them. Therefore, there was really no experience to talk about what kind of dazzling material to use. Since it was decided, Kong Shinmu temporarily left the treasure pavilion. In the process, Moya still gave Kong Shinmu a lot of constructive suggestions. For example, she was the one who suggested to Kong Shinmu to buy the 33 Heavens God feather. She also put it on credit and let Kong Shinmu use the materials as collateral. There were also many other dazzling materials that did not catch Moya's attention. That was why Kong Shinmu did not find other dazzling materials. Otherwise, with Kong Shinmu's vision, he would still be able to find many suitable materials. Unfortunately, Moya was much more experienced than Kong Shinmu. She was more knowledgeable and had a very accurate understanding of many dazzling materials. Therefore, she was very clear about which dazzling materials were really strong, and which were relatively weak. For example, she criticized Kong Shinmu for dazzling the illusory ghost book with the rose stone of nothingness. This dazzling effect increased the power of the illusory ghost book by relying on the perception of the void. It sounded very strong. After all, Kong Shinmu's perception of the void was very strong. But in fact, the effect was only average, and the power did not increase by much. This kind of rose stone of nothingness was prepared for dragon weapons with specific effects. When Kong Shinmu dazzled the illusory ghost book, the effect was really average. And when Kong Shinmu used it, he felt that this was indeed the case. Therefore, he listened to Moya's advice. Since I can't find more suitable materials, then I will not look for more for now. After leaving the treasure pavilion, Kong Shinmu muttered to himself, let's first study the information about the permanent middle-grade relic. Let's go back to the Gu family first. The Gu family was now a resting area that Kong Shinmu frequented. Ever since Kong Shinmu defeated Zhao Qingtian, no one dared to find trouble with the Gu family. Moreover, Emperor Shi seemed to have given many people a warning because of the incident with Zhao Qingtian. Gu Xinyue, Kong Shinmu, Chu Yueqiang, and the others were all cultivators of the new power of inheritance. At the same time, they had not given up their identity as dragon warriors. Whoever attacked them would be disrespecting Emperor Shi and the divine dragon. Under such circumstances, who would dare to provoke Kong Shinmu and the others? Kong Shinmu and the others successfully returned to the Gu family residence. Then, They began to discuss the permanent middle-grade relic. With Mo Ya's strength, she was completely qualified to enter the high-level relic, or even the super relic, let alone the middle-grade relic. Chapter 5068. Of course, Kong Shinmu felt that since Mo Ya dared to enter an intermediate permanent relic with him, she definitely had some life-saving means, even though she would be suppressed. After returning from the treasure pavilion of the Five Extremes mysterious Ice Holy Land, Kong Shinmu stayed at the Gu family residence. He first used the refined heavenly precious stone, the numerous crystals, and the 33 heavens divine feathers. These three dazzling materials were transformed into the formless celestial star brilliance. Their power was completely integrated into the celestial star. From then on, the celestial star had three dazzling transcendent divine dragon weapons. Although Kong Shinmu could only release the power of 800 battle patterns at the beginning, the power and effect of these 800 battle patterns were already equivalent to 2,160 battle patterns after the dazzling transformation. Compared to the Phantom Ghost book that Kong Shinmu had used before, this could be said to be a qualitative improvement. With the Celestial Star, I basically have an absolute crushing advantage over others in terms of battle weapons. Kong Shinmu was now very satisfied. In the past, he had always been at a disadvantage in terms of battle weapons. Now these disadvantages had not only been made up for, but they had also surpassed others and become an advantage. Once he reached the level of Super Divine Dragon, he would be able to fully exert the effect of the Celestial Star, which would be a base increase of 2,400 battle patterns by 24 times. Coupled with the refined heavenly precious stone and the numerous crystals, the Celestial Star alone would be able to increase the power of Kong Shinmu's Dragon Martial Technique by nearly 65 times. These dazzling materials would increase the power of the Celestial Star by more than 40 times. Coupled with the effect of the 33 Heavens Divine Feathers, Kong Shinmu did not dare to imagine how terrifying his attack would be. Even an ordinary high-level Holy Spirit Dragon Martial Technique, the 9th stage Extreme Roaring Dragon Blast, would be able to erupt with unimaginable power. It seems that when I reach the Transcendent Grade, I still have to cultivate other Dragon Martial Techniques and the Transcendent Grade Super Divine Dragon Martial Technique. The high-level Holy Spirit Dragon Martial Technique was currently the strongest Dragon Martial Technique for Kong Shinmu. But once he reached the Super Divine Dragon level, it would be different. If he continued to use the Transcendent Grade Holy Spirit Dragon Martial Technique, the power would be somewhat insufficient. Of course, even if he only relied on the Celestial Star, Kong Shinmu could still temporarily defeat a Transcendent Grade opponent who was much stronger than him. If he cultivated the Transcendent Grade Divine Dragon Martial Technique, he would naturally be even stronger. Now that he had cultivated the Divine Dragon Martial Technique, he would be even stronger. However, the inherited strength of the Dragon God clan was rapidly improving with the possession of the formless weapon, Chen Xing. In any case, Mu Divine Dragon Martial Technique would be to the Divine Dragon Martial Technique. Jiang Shin Tian Star would to mention, the Divine Dragon. And Celestial Mu, the Divine Dragon Martial Artists, Dragon, Divine Dragon, Emperor Dragon Martial Artists was Tian the Dragon, Star, King and Dragon Level and King and Dragon was Divine Dragon. Be it their aura or power, they had reached the level of Divine Dragon. Originally, Gu Xinyue's strength was equivalent to the first stage of the Transcendent Grade. But now that she was facing Kong Shinmu, she realized that the first stage of the Transcendent Grade was not enough. Once Kong Shinmu used the Celestial Star, she would not be able to withstand it. At first it was fine. Kong Shinmu did not use his full strength and only used the basic effect of the Celestial Star. However, as Kong Shinmu used his dazzle ability, she could not withstand it and was completely defeated. Kong Shinmu, with the enhancement of the Celestial Star, I'm afraid you can easily defeat a second-stage Transcendent Grade opponent. You are comparable to a third-stage Transcendent Grade expert. Gu Xinyue could not help but sigh. Generally speaking, which peak Emperor-level dragon weapon would be so luxurious? The foundation was 2,400 battle patterns, and it had such a luxurious dazzle effect. Although Kong Shinmu could only unleash the power of 800 battle patterns, it was already stronger than almost all Emperor-level holy spiritual dragon weapons. It's not enough. I have to be stronger. Kong Shinmu shook his head slightly. Of course, he only said this in his heart. If he really said it out loud, he would definitely be beaten up. Wasn't he too good at pretending? But in reality, that was what Kong Shinmu thought. He could not see any hope of reaching the level of the ancestral dragon. If it was the supreme dragon, Kong Shinmu could still see the target and the route. However, when it came to the ancestral dragon, Kong Shinmu did not have any thoughts about it. If he could not reach the ancestral dragon level, he might not be able to rescue his father from the dragon sealing abyss. No matter what, Kong Shinmu's current strength was not bad. Obtaining Chen Xing allowed him to cross 2 levels to fight with enemies. Originally, he could only defeat a level 1 transcendent god and fight with a level 2 transcendent god with the power of the dragon gods. But now, he could easily defeat a level 2 transcendent god and even suppress a level 3 transcendent god. If the battle lasted for a long time, he might even be able to kill a level 3 transcendent god. Kong Shinmu and Gu Xinyue were sparring in the martial arts field. They were not only testing Chen Xing's attack power, but also his other abilities. For example, defensive ability. Chen Xing's defensive ability exploded, and Kong Shinmu turned all the battle patterns into defensive battle patterns. Then, the endless power of Chen Xing condensed into 9 layers of Chen Xing barriers around Kong Shinmu's divine dragon body. The defensive strength of these 9 layers of Chen Xing barriers reached the peak of the level 2 transcendent god. At the very least, even if Gu Xinyue used all her strength, she would not be able to break even 1 layer of Chen Xing barriers. This was almost considered an absolute defense, at least at the peak emperor level. This was also Kong Shinmu's trump card and confidence to go to the intermediate permanent relic. Other than defense, his other abilities were also extremely outstanding. For example, if Chen Xing's battle patterns were all hidden battle patterns, Kong Shinmu could display more than 20 times the concealment ability of the Mo Wu beast. Not to mention a peak emperor level, even a true level 4 transcendent god or level 6 transcendent god would not be able to find him. If Kong Shinmu used the power of the Starry Sky inheritance, he would probably be able to hide from anyone who had not reached the supreme level. The effect was comparable to when Deputy General Qing Lin gave Kong Shinmu a hidden power at the Soaring Dragon Fortress. This made Kong Shinmu feel extremely safe. At least in the intermediate permanent relic, as long as he did not fall into any dangerous traps, there was basically no danger. Chapter 5069. This was because there were many old fellows who explored permanent intermediate relics all year round. Therefore, in addition to exploring, they would basically mark some special places or leave some traps. Therefore, when exploring permanent intermediate relics, one would not only face the dangers of other races, but also the traps of one's own race. Fortunately, Kong Shinmu's perception was also very clear. His battle soldier Chen Xing still had the ability to convert Spectre battle runes. If it was all converted into Spectre battle runes, it could quickly restore the battle soldier's energy, and even Kong Shinmu's own energy. This was not what Kong Shinmu wanted. After all, he had the ability to devour. However, he soon discovered in actual combat that the ability to devour combined with Spectre battle runes could produce several times the effect. It could instantly restore all his energy. This was not as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. It was completely superimposed. Therefore, the Divine Dragon Tyrant Body Technique and Dark Dragon Filth Mastery that Kong Shinmu cultivated could also exert a stronger effect, allowing him to continuously strengthen his own defense. Just as Kong Shinmu and Gu Xinyue were sparring, a few guests had come to the Gu family residence. They were Kong Shinmu's friends from the Dragon Martial Continent. Ran Ran, Xiao Bai, Xiao Yuhua, and Liang Xiao were all now moving towards the peak of the Imperial Realm. However, they were still some distance away. They had cultivated in the 5 Extremes mysterious Ice Holy Land and had achieved very high achievements. Kong Shinmu discovered that whether it was Ran Ran, Xiao Bai, Xiao Yuhua, or Liang Xiao, their combat strength was much stronger than the last time he saw them. Especially Ran Ran. Kong Shinmu had always admired Ran Ran's cultivation talent. This time, Kong Shinmu discovered that Ran Ran had actually reached the 8th level of the Imperial Realm. As for her combat strength, it should not be too bad. She should even be able to compete with a supreme god-level opponent. Her route was the same as Kong Shinmu's, which was to defend and then counterattack. Therefore, the effect of the Dark Dragon Filth controlling art she cultivated was extremely strong. After coming to the great world of the dragon gods, she also cultivated the Divine Dragon Tyrant Body Art. She could freely switch between her attack and defense forms, which made her more flexible in battle. As for their arrival, Kong Shinmu naturally had to welcome them. Unfortunately, they couldn't be brought along for the expedition to the intermediate permanent ruins. They could only stay here and improve themselves first. When they left, Kong Shinmu gave each of them a lot of cultivation resources. Xiao Bai and Ran Ran were especially reluctant to part with Kong Shinmu. This separation with Kong Shinmu stimulated their daily cultivation. It made them want to work hard to narrow the gap between them and Kong Shinmu. At the moment, Kong Shinmu had not broken through to the Supreme God level. Once Kong Shinmu broke through to the first level of the Supreme God level, it would be even more difficult for them to catch up. Therefore, time was too precious to them. Kong Shinmu only kept Liang Xiao. Liang Xiao, your compatibility with the divine dragon blood is 58. This means that you won't encounter a bottleneck until you reach the 8th level of the Imperial Realm. Kong Shinmu said to Liang Xiao, however, you should have felt the existence of the bottleneck now. You even know that? Liang Xiao was a little shocked. However, on second thought, he scratched his head and said, that's right. You said before that you can help us break through the bottleneck. He recalled what Kong Shinmu had said and still couldn't believe it. If Kong Shinmu could really help them break through the realm without encountering a bottleneck, that would be amazing. No one in the entire Dragon God clan didn't need this ability. Except for geniuses like Ran Ran. Ran Ran's compatibility had reached 72. She wouldn't encounter a bottleneck until she broke through to the Supreme level. However, at the Supreme level, there would definitely be a limit to the improvement of one's strength. One had to know that there was also a difference in strength between the Supreme levels. If she wanted to become an expert of the Supreme level, 72 compatibility would not allow her to reach the peak. At that time she might still have to rely on Kong Shinmu. Come with me. Since they had met this time, Kong Shinmu directly helped Liang Xiao. Liang Xiao followed with a face full of excitement. This guy had been a little crazy recently. Even a lot of white hair had grown out of his head. After all, his teammates, Ran Ran and the other two girls, had not encountered a bottleneck yet. Even Xiao Yuhua could easily reach the 9th level of the Emperor stage and was still one level away from the bottleneck. However, Liang Xiao had encountered a bottleneck first. It was because his compatibility with the Divine Dragon's blood essence was only 58, while Xiao Yuhua's was 59. Therefore, she encountered a bottleneck when she was one level higher than him. As for Xiao Bai, her compatibility with the Divine Dragon's blood essence was 62. Generally speaking, she would only encounter a bottleneck when she reached the 2nd level of the Transcendent God stage. Gu Xinyue's blood essence compatibility was 61. Once she reached the 1st level of the Transcendent God stage, she would feel the existence of a bottleneck. This might be the reason why Gu Xinyue had not broken through. She wanted to consolidate her strength to the strongest level and then hope that it would be easier to break through the bottleneck. Unfortunately, compatibility meant everything. A compatibility of 61 meant that when Gu Xinyue broke through to the 2nd level of the Transcendent God stage, she would definitely encounter a bottleneck that would be very difficult to break through. She would even need more than 10 times the cultivation resources to forcefully break through the bottleneck before she could continue to break through. However, Kong Shinmu could easily settle such a matter. He only needed to rely on his devouring power. He could devour the energy of the dragon mark and transfer it to the bodies of others, allowing them to break through the bottleneck. Such a breakthrough had nothing to do with the bottleneck. However, this was only the last step. The other party needed to work hard first and let them clearly feel the existence of the bottleneck. Only then would the success rate be the highest. Otherwise, it would not be impossible to succeed. Kong Shinmu would need to consume more devouring power to transfer enough dragon mark energy to the other party and allow them to break through. Liang Xiao was left behind by Kong Shinmu. Then, Kong Shinmu brought him to the underground training field of the Gu family residence. There were very few people there. Under Kong Shinmu's orders, no one was allowed to approach this place. Other than Kong Shinmu and Liang Xiao, the only ones present were Gu Xinyue and Mo Ya. Gu Xinyue already knew about Kong Shinmu's ability. As for Mo Ya, Kong Shinmu could not hide it from her. If she wanted to know, it did not matter if she was present or not. Therefore, he could only let her be. Chapter 50-70. Liang Xiao followed Kong Shinmu all the way to the underground training field of the Gu family. Gu Xinyue and Emoya followed along the way, discussing something. Warm Moon, did you know that he had this ability before? Have you used it anywhere else? Even Emoya looked a little nervous. This was because the ability to help people break through bottlenecks was simply terrifying. If news of this were to spread, it would definitely cause a huge uproar in the entire Dragon God race. It was hard to predict what consequences this would bring to Kong Shinmu. Thus, Emoya was extremely nervous, afraid that the news would leak out. After all, she was truly concerned about Kong Shinmu.
I've never seen it before.
Gu Xinyue shook her head, but she still quickly said, when I found out about his ability, he took the initiative to tell me not to be afraid of breaking through to the first level of the transcendent god realm. He had a way to let me directly cross the bottleneck and break through. At that time, I didn't quite believe it, but he said that when he was in the Dragon Martial continent, he had once helped a senior break through. He had already grasped the method, and this method was definitely something that only he could use. In other words, only one of his seniors in the Dragon Martial continent knows about this matter?
Emoya narrowed her eyes under her veil.
It's said that it's his best senior, and their relationship is extremely close. He's currently in charge of developing his Devouring Dragon group. Also, this senior of his seems to be a senior from his birthplace, and has had a great impact on his life trajectory. Gu Xinyue said, he said that without that senior, he might not have been able to go to the Dragon Martial continent's 4 great Dragon Martial academies, and he wouldn't have been able to reach his current level in such a short period of time. So I'm quite grateful to his senior. Gu Xinyue blushed as she spoke. If that senior hadn't pushed Kong Shinmu back then, I might have missed the best opportunity to get to know Kong Shinmu. Seeing her blush, Emoya couldn't help but laugh. She held her hand and said, if you have any thoughts, just tell him directly. I treat Shinwu like a younger brother. I think you're pretty good. If he doesn't even like you, then I'm afraid no one in this world will be able to enter his eyes. But I feel like he has something on his mind. It's like he's resisting me. Gu Xinyue shook her head and sighed. It's not that he doesn't like me, it's just that he seems to have someone else in his heart. Your intuition should be good. Emoya chuckled softly and said, I also feel this. It seems like he has some burden in his heart. I have to find a chance to ask him. She was of the same generation as Emperor Shi Divine Dragon and Zai Divine Dragon. Moreover, she was a senior who cultivated the power of nature. To Kong Shinmu, it was indeed more cordial. She acutely sensed that there were some things that Kong Shinmu didn't say, which should be related to other inheritances. Could it be that the girl that Kong Shinmu couldn't let go of was from another race's inheritance? The more Emoya thought about it, the more likely it was. If that was the case, it was indeed a little troublesome. After all, the relationship between different races was mostly one of competition. Although there was cooperation, it was mostly on a small scale. It was rare for a dragon to marry a girl from another race in the Dragon Gods. Once it happened, it would be reviled and opposed by everyone. Basically, there were very few cases of success. No matter what, Emoya planned to find a chance to ask him. Of course, whether Kong Shinmu would say it or not was another matter. If he didn't say it, Emoya wouldn't be so thick-skinned to ask. Even if she treated Kong Shinmu as a younger brother, she would definitely respect his privacy. The 2 girls followed him to the underground training field of the Gu family's mansion. In the field, Liang Xiao had already transformed into a blood-red divine dragon body. His divine dragon body had reached the 8th level of the martial emperor level, but it seemed that he had also cultivated the body-refining dragon martial arts technique. It looks like the dark dragon defying filth technique? Emoya was very knowledgeable and quickly recognized it. It's the dark dragon defying filth technique again. Gu Xinyue didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You don't say. Emoya smiled and said, Liang Xiao looks like he often explodes his dragon blood. If that's his main fighting style, then cultivating the body-refining dragon martial arts technique like the dark dragon filth controlling art that strengthens his physique and recovery speed is very suitable for him. Self-exploding dragon blood. Although it's rare in the 5 Extremes mysterious Ice Holy Land, there are still quite a few. I heard that there's a madman recently.
Gu Xinyue covered her mouth and laughed softly.
Looks like it's this Liang Xiao. Indeed, in some of the recent training in the 5 Extremes mysterious Ice Holy Land, Liang Xiao's reckless fighting style was directly evaluated as a madman. As long as he could kill his opponent by exploding his dragon blood, Liang Xiao would definitely not show mercy. Even if he was seriously injured after exploding his dragon blood, he was not afraid. The main reason he was confident was because he had cultivated the dark dragon filth controlling art to the peak of the heaven rank. This meant that his dark dragon filth controlling art was already quite mature. However, compared to the dark dragon filth controlling art that Ran had comprehended to the extreme sage realm, its effects were still a little lacking. On the battlefield, Kong Shinmu wasn't anxious as Liang Xiao turned into a blood-red divine dragon. He first observed Liang Xiao's current state and discovered that he had indeed reached the peak of the 8th level of the Emperor realm. It looked like he was in a hurry to break through the bottleneck and step into the 9th level of the Emperor realm. Unfortunately, a bottleneck was a bottleneck. Without 10 times the resources and effort, it was impossible to break through the bottleneck. If he wanted to break through the bottleneck by himself, he would need at least 3 to 5 years of hard work and hundreds of thousands of gold dragon coins. Otherwise, he would definitely not be able to do it. However, with Kong Shinmu around, this was Liang Xiao's greatest fortune. As Kong Shinmu understood Liang Xiao's current situation, Kong Shinmu immediately released his devouring power. His devouring power contained the energy of the dragon mark. Through the special effects of the devouring power, the energy of the dragon mark was quickly transferred to Liang Xiao's divine dragon body bit by bit. Immediately after, the overall aura of Liang Xiao's blood-red divine dragon body rapidly rose in the eyes of Mo Ya and Gu Xinyue. This speed of improvement caused the two ladies' eyes to widen. Even a supreme senior like Mo Ya had never seen such a terrifying improvement speed. The energy transferability of Kong Shinmu's dragon mark was simply amazing. At this speed, Liang Xiao will be able to break through to the 9th level of the Emperor realm in less than 6 hours. If Liang Xiao works hard on his own, it will take at least 3 to 5 years to break through the bottleneck. With Kong Shinmu's help, he can really ignore the bottleneck. Chapter 50-71. Although Mo Ya was experienced and knowledgeable and was considered a senior, she had never heard of Zhang Shunwu forcefully increasing someone's cultivation base. This ability was amazing. Mo Ya couldn't help but say to Gu Xinyue next to her, "I don't know if his ability is only effective for dragon warriors? Is it useful for those who practice other inherited powers?" "I don't know about that." Gu Xinyue had a helpless expression on her face. She really didn't know. Generally speaking, she wouldn't consider such a question. Only Mo Ya, who practiced divine power, didn't belong to the scope of the dragon warrior's inheritance, so she subconsciously thought of this question. And Kong Shinmu, who was passing the energy of the dragon mark to Liang Xiao, seemed to hear her question. So Kong Shinmu's funny words came over. "I really haven't tried this. Otherwise, Senior Mo Ya, have you encountered a bottleneck in the cultivation of divine power? Maybe I can give it a try. You are passing the energy of the dragon mark to Liang Xiao, and we, the cultivators of divine power, need divine power to break through. Where can you absorb it for me?" Mo Ya was a little funny. "You focus on improving Liang Xiao. As for me, it's not your turn to worry. What's more, after reaching the supreme level, you need the help of supreme power to improve. You haven't even come into contact with supreme power now, so don't think about these problems." Hearing her words, Kong Shinmu had to stop. Indeed, he wanted to help Mo Ya now, but that level was still far from enough. After all, she was a supreme master. Liang Xiao's cultivation momentum, under Kong Shinmu's passing, was constantly and steadily increasing. Mo Ya carefully observed this process from the side, and every once in a while, she would sigh with emotion. She really felt that this ability was too heaven-defying. If it could be popularized, how strong would the dragon gods become? Even if it couldn't be guaranteed that everyone could enjoy the effect of passing Kong Shinmu's, even if only a small number of people improved, it would drive the overall strength of the entire dragon gods to skyrocket. Of course, the overall strength of the dragon gods was already very strong. Mo Ya didn't expect to make the dragon gods stronger. She didn't even want Kong Shinmu's ability to be exposed. She was also very selfish. She only hoped that the people around her would become better and better. As for others, she didn't care. "If it weren't for those people who left him to die, my brother wouldn't have." When Mo Ya thought of her younger brother, she naturally felt a sense of resistance towards the other members of the dragon gods. Then, just as Mo Ya had predicted, Kong Xinmu transferred the energy of the dragon mark to Liang Xiao for 6 hours. Liang Xiao finally felt the power of the divine dragon's blood essence in his body, achieving the final transformation. He had broken through to the 9th level of the martial emperor stage. This breakthrough was something he had always dreamed of. Originally, he planned to achieve it within a year, but he didn't expect that with Kong Xinmu's help, he could achieve it within 3 hours. This speed simply made Liang Xiao feel like he was dreaming. Now, I am also a peak martial emperor expert. Liang Xiao felt inexplicably excited as he felt the power in his body. A peak martial emperor with a cultivation at the peak of the reincarnation tribulation realm was the strongest existence before the supreme god realm. Unfortunately, his current combat strength was still much weaker than that of peak martial emperors like Gu Xinyue and Kong Xinmu. The main difference was in terms of hardware. Whether it was Gu Xinyue or Kong Xinmu, they both had a lot of external support. For example, Gu Xinyue had absorbed the psychedelic star crystal, and Kong Xinmu now had the formless weapon star crystal, which allowed their combat strength to soar. As for Liang Xiao, his main focus was on improving the level of his cultivation and blood essence. He hadn't reached the stage where he really pursued strength. Therefore, it was normal for his current combat strength to be slightly weaker than that of Kong Xinmu and Gu Xinyue. However, his combat strength was still slightly stronger than that of an ordinary peak martial emperor. After all, he had cultivated many powerful dragon techniques, and his comprehension and combat talent weren't weak either. In addition, he had an aura of desperation. As long as his opponent didn't completely crush him, no one would be able to gain much of an advantage against him. I didn't expect to reach the peak martial emperor before them. Liang Xiao felt a little emotional as he tested his current strength. Originally, he had been cultivating with Ran Ran, Xiao Bai, and Xiao Yuhua. The 4 of them had agreed to see who would break through to the super divine dragon level first. However, he didn't expect that when the 3 women were still at level 8 martial emperor, he had already reached the peak of level 9 martial emperor. It seemed that Kong Xinmu was really powerful. Liang Xiao couldn't help but be impressed by Kong Xinmu now. Xinwu, thank you so much this time. Liang Xiao suddenly removed his divine dragon form and reverted to a young man in red. He said to Kong Xinmu solemnly, "It's all right." Kong Xinmu waved his hand. He had promised Liang Xiao this. When I need to break through to the supreme god level, I will look for you again." Liang Xiao said solemnly. Pfft. Upon hearing Liang Xiao's words, Gu Xinyue and Emoya, who were watching from the side of the training field, couldn't take it anymore. They had thought that Liang Xiao would say something else. They didn't expect him to say something like this. They couldn't help but want to beat him up. As for Kong Xinmu, he looked helpless too. "As long as I'm free, you can look for me any time." "Oh right, it should be Xiao Yuhua next. When she reaches the peak martial emperor level and wants to break through to the supreme god level, you can look for me together with her." That's for sure. Liang Xiao was currently very excited. Don't be fooled by his simple-minded appearance. He knew very well what kind of unparalleled opportunity he had obtained. He had broken through the bottleneck. In just 6 hours, he had broken through the bottleneck. Moreover, he hadn't consumed any cultivation resources. Kong Xinmu used his devouring power to transfer energy to him. Of course, what he transferred was the energy from the dragon mark that he had absorbed. However, the energy from the dragon mark was useless to him at the moment. He had been at the peak martial emperor level for a long time. Hence, the energy from the dragon mark was the excess energy from the dragon mark that he had devoured. It was stored in the devouring space. The stored energy from the dragon mark could help dozens of people break through to the supreme god level without exhausting it. Chapter 5072. After Liang Xiao broke through, he didn't stay to disturb Kong Xinmu. Before he left, he glanced at Gu Xinyue and Emoya, then quietly turned to Kong Xinmu and said in a low voice, "Xinwu, where did you get another beauty?" "Oh right. Ran Ran and Xiao Bai miss you so much. If you have time, at least give them a response. Although you have a new woman outside, you can't forget the old one." "What are you talking about?" Kong Xinmu looked at him with a broken expression. This kid really dared to say that. Did he really think that others couldn't hear him just because he lowered his voice? Perhaps Gu Xinyue really couldn't hear him, but Emoya was a supreme powerhouse. Unfortunately, Kong Shinmu didn't tell Liang Xiao about Emoya's cultivation, which led to this tragedy. However, although Emoya heard this, she didn't show any reaction on the surface. After all, she was wearing a veil, so others couldn't see her expression. However, in Emoya's heart, 10,000 bulls were stampeding madly. This Liang Xiao really dared to say anything. What new woman? What old woman? She was actually treated as Kong Shinmu's woman? Emoya didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, Emoya wouldn't take the words of a little rascal like Liang Xiao too seriously. She knew that this kind of person really didn't have a filter on his mouth. He said whatever came to his mind, and the more irritating it sounded, the more likely it was what he meant. It seemed like Liang Xiao really thought that she looked like a couple with Kong Shinmu. This feeling made Emoya feel a little strange. Finally, Liang Xiao was sent away by Kong Shinmu. Kong Shinmu returned to Emoya with a bitter smile. Senior Emoya, please don't take it to heart. This kid just didn't think before speaking, so he offended you. It's all right. Emoya chuckled softly and said, she made me sound younger than I am. Only Gu Xinhua was confused. What's wrong? Did Liang Xiao say anything? Hearing Gu Xinhua's question, Emoya and Kong Shinmu looked at each other and smiled, but they didn't explain. It was better not to let Gu Xinhua know what Liang Xiao had said. Kong Shinmu had basically completed all the preparations for his return. Kong Shinmu had spent several days familiarizing himself with Chen Xing's combat style, mainly because of the sparring with Emoya, which gave him a lot of inspiration. Emoya's divine power was very strong. Even though she had suppressed her strength to the peak of the martial emperor realm to fight against Kong Shinmu still had a hard time dealing with her. This meant that Emoya's divine power had already surpassed her own level. Just like Kong Shinmu, she was an expert with the ability to kill enemies above her level. A peak-level martial emperor could fight a transcendent god level 3. According to Emoya, such a strength couldn't even be considered to be a top-notch existence in a mid-grade eternal ruin. Those old men who had been researching and exploring permanent intermediate relics were the ones who had reached the peak of the martial emperor realm. They had improved everything they could. Those old men were Kong Shinmu's biggest opponents on this trip. Let's choose this permanent intermediate relic. Kong Shinmu took out the list of permanent intermediate relics given by Emperor Shi. His target was a permanent intermediate relic located on the 6th level of the Chaos Battlefield. This permanent intermediate relic had been around for 9 months, but it was considered a relatively young relic among the permanent relics. Generally, permanent relics had a lifespan of about 3 to 5 years. In other words, a permanent intermediate relic would basically take 3 to 5 years to fully uncover its secrets, or at least 90% of its secrets. A permanent intermediate relic that had existed for more than 3 years was basically not worth exploring. As for the permanent intermediate relic that Kong Shinmu had targeted, it had only been around for 9 months, so it was considered relatively young. Most importantly, this permanent intermediate relic was controlled by the dragon gods, the demon gods, the ancient phoenix, the talisman water, and the 1,000-winged snake. Putting aside the dragon gods, the demon gods and the ancient phoenix now recognized Kong Shinmu. If they entered this relic, the practitioners of the demon gods and the ancient phoenix could choose to join forces. As for the talisman water and the 1,000-winged snake, they were the opponents that Kong Shinmu had to face. To deal with the talisman water, Kong Shinmu still had some trump cards. For example, he could use Qi Yan, the princess of the talisman water, as a hostage at a critical moment. Although she was only a princess of the royal family of the talisman water, her status was there. It would not be a problem for her to threaten the opponents of the talisman water. As for the 1,000-winged snake, Kong Shinmu did not have any tricks up his sleeves, so he could only face them head-on. Of course, this didn't mean that Jiang Shenwu had to fight to the death with his opponent from the 1,000-winged serpent clan. Instead, he only had to fight head-on when he saw a relevant benefit. At other times, he just had to hide. This permanent intermediate relic on the 6th level of the Chaos Battlefield is called Emperor Wa's Relic. It is said that Emperor Wa, an expert from the ancient times, is buried there, and there are many relics of Emperor Wa. Emoya said according to the information on the list. As for Kong Shinmu, he was listening to the suggestions of the demon god ancestor consciousness and the black dragon consciousness in his mind. Emperor Wa was in existence from the same era as me. The demon god ancestor consciousness took the lead and said lazily, "This Emperor Hua is a snake demon, but I have to say that she is very strong. The inheritance of Emperor Hua that she left behind should also be very strong. Unfortunately, it is impossible for you to master the power of Emperor Hua's inheritance. This is not the power of nature, but the real power of inheritance of an ancient expert. For example, the power of the inheritance of the 16-winged heavenly fiend celestial god was researched by several generations of people. Finally, together with the inheritors of the other fiend celestial race, they formed the current fiend celestial race. Only then did the fiend celestial race come to this scale. It is impossible for this Emperor Hua's inheritance to be in this relic. This is most likely a branch palace. Of course, this does not mean that there are not many resources in it. On the contrary, since it is a branch palace, it must also store the important items left by Emperor Hua, and it may even be the key to the inheritance. Even if it is only a key part of the inheritance, it is a great luck to get it. Boy, this inheritance is useless to you, but as long as you can get the key, even if it is only a part, it is enough for you to unseal 2 more layers of seal in your starry sky small world. Jiang Xinwu narrowed his eyes when he heard the demon god ancestor's words. Chapter 5073. The inheritance of Emperor Hua could definitely be counted as a kind of inheritance comparable to the inheritance of the demon god clan. It was a pity that the inheritance of Emperor Hua had not been excavated. The relic of Emperor Hua's inheritance found on the 6th level of the Chaos Battlefield was the first one, and it was also a permanent intermediate relic. It was extremely difficult to explore this permanent intermediate relic. At least now, the peak royal realm practitioners of the 5 clans had explored this permanent intermediate relic for 9 months, but they had not gained much. The Dragon God clan, the Demon God clan, the Ancient Phoenix clan, the Talisman Water clan, and the Thousand-Winged Snake clan combined had explored less than 20% of the entire permanent intermediate relic. Therefore, there was still a lot of room for exploration in this relic of Emperor Hua's inheritance. Of course, it was extremely difficult. But once he got something related to Emperor Hua's inheritance, Kong Xinmu would be rich. Although he had no use for it, he could exchange it for unimaginable wealth even if he sold it. It is said that the high-level members of the Dragon God clan have collected a lot of things related to other inheritances, which are the core resources for the cultivation of those inheritances. Moya continued to say to Kong Xinmu, "It is because of the lack of these core resources that some inheritances have not risen in this world. Otherwise, there would be more types of inheritances in our world now." That is to say, the high-level members of the Dragon God clan can't cultivate these inheritances themselves, but they also seal them up and don't let others cultivate them, right? Hearing this, Kong Xinmu raised his eyebrows. Yes. Moya smiled gently. The white veil in front of her swayed gently, looking extremely sweet. Kong Xinmu nodded. He didn't think much about it. Anyway, if Kong Xinmu got the core resources of Emperor Hua's inheritance, he would definitely choose to sell them. The high-level members of the Dragon God clan would choose to collect these core resources, so they should buy them at a relatively high price. Only now did Kong Xinmu realize how shabby it was that he only got a reward of 1 million golden dragon coins when he got the holy item of heaven and earth in the primary relic. It was like sending a beggar away. Of course, for Kong Xinmu at that time, 1 million golden dragon coins was indeed enough to solve his urgent need. But now that he thought about it, it was really too little. A saint artifact with 9 layers of engravings was worth at least 10 million gold dragon coins in the market. This was something that could affect the overall strength of a race. But it was useless to think about it now. Fortunately, with Kong Xinmu as the breakthrough point, the warriors of the Dragon God clan indirectly ended the war, so that Kong Xinmu's achievement and reputation reached the peak, and Kong Xinmu was directly rewarded with 80 million gold dragon coins of cultivation resources. Some of these belonged to Emperor Shi, and even the part that belonged to Kong Xinmu was fought for by Emperor Shi. It could be seen that the so-called high-level members of the Dragon God clan were also very selfish. Anyway, after a short discussion with Moya and Gu Xinyue, Kong Xinmu also planned to go to this permanent medium-level relic of Emperor Hua's inheritance. But before that, they had to make some preparations. In the military headquarters of the Dragon God clan, there was now a lot of internal information about this medium-level relic, and this information was not available to the outside world. Even Emperor Shi and the Divine Dragon would not be able to obtain the internal information of this relic without authorization. But since Kong Shinmu wanted to go to this relic, he must understand the situation in the relic. After all, this relic had been open for 9 months. In the military headquarters of the Dragon God clan, there must be detailed information about this relic. I will go to the military headquarters to apply. It may take some time. Give me a month. Emoya thought for a while and said, exploring the permanent relic is a big deal, and we can't be careless. So, we must get the exploration records and analysis information of the last 9 months. Because this relic has a great influence, it will take a long time to get the information. We can only wait. Okay. Kong Shinmu was a little disappointed when he heard this. But the consciousness of the demon god ancestor was not surprised at all. Relic like this is regarded as a treasure by every race. If you just want to go in, then you are naturally welcome. But it is not so easy to get the top-secret information obtained by their predecessors. It is good enough to apply for the information. A month is not too long. Kong Shinmu could only nod again in agreement. Although it would take a month, it was better to get some information than to go into the relic directly and be killed by someone who was not familiar with the situation. Then I will have to trouble you, senior. Kong Shinmu said to Emoya. Why call me senior? Call me sister. Emoya patted his little head gently and corrected him with a chuckle. Unfortunately, in front of her, Kong Shinmu really could not call her sister now. So, Emoya did not make things difficult for him. She turned and left first. She still had many things to do after applying for the information. On the other hand, Kong Shinmu was a little free all of a sudden. If I want to enter the intermediate relic, my cultivation cannot break through to the level of the Super Dragon God.